to meet you. I did. That's not... I see his lawyer here. I don't know why. Right. But I think I just know what to say.
So, okay, well, I'll just...
So where did you get all your...
I think there's still some there.
Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Kalamazoo City Commission to order for Monday, December 3rd, 2018. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Cooney.
Present.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Here.
Commissioner Sykes. Commissioner Urban.
Here.
Vice Mayor Knott. Mayor Hopewell.
Present. May we have a motion to excuse Vice Mayor Knott and Commissioner Sykes?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Cunningham.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Cooney. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We're going to go right to item C, the adoption of the formal agenda. Commissioners, do you have any changes to the agenda at this point? Anyone in the audience wanting to comment on items under the consent agenda? That's items under F. That item will need to be moved to the regular agenda if you want to make comments. If you have such an item, please indicate at this time. That's items under the consent agenda. Hearing none, communications, Manager Ritchie.
Just one item, Your Honor. Next Monday at 4 p.m., 4 to 8 p.m., we'll be holding a budget work session in our community room. Again, that's next Monday, the 10th, from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m.
How large a budget is this typically?
It is in the $140 million range.
And these are citizens' tax dollars, such as the citizens that are sitting here now tonight?
Correct.
Yeah, so we look forward to all of you coming next when we're here because, you know, that's our work too, and it affects you, your water, your toilets, your snow plowing, your police and fire and all of that. And I appreciate you being interested in one single issue, but we'd love for you to join us and talk about the priorities for this city that will spend $140+ million of your dollars. So we look forward to all of you coming back and hanging out with us that night. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Item E1, I'll now open a public hearing to receive comments on the resolution. Oops, what did I forget? No, I won't. E1, opening a public hearing to receive comments on a resolution approving the proposed Kalamazoo Downtown Economic Growth Authority Development and TIF Plan. Anyone in the audience wanting to comment on this item, please step forward. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Audience. Seeing none, commissioners requested action. I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners requested action, a motion to adopt the resolution. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Urban.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Cooney. Commissioner Anderson?
was going to say a little thing about that, but I didn't know if they wanted to do any of that very first stuff.
Where
all set?
we're at on
We're
the
all
agenda.
that? I missed that. Okay. Okay, fine. So on this topic, once again, I would like to, I don't know if there's individuals here tonight. Yeah, I see some of them from our Downtown Development Authority group, DKI, that we contract with. I just want to say that I really, really appreciate all the fantastic work that's been occurring with not only our other tax, collecting entities in Kalamazoo County, but individuals who are very, very interested in our downtown thriving. And we had really gotten to a point where it was hard to see the next positive step for our current situation. And by creating this new model, taking advantage of what was there, being very, very creative, very collaborative, this, to me, sets the stage for a further continued improvement in our county downtown, here in our county seat of Kalamazoo. And all the work that's happened on the city staff side and downtown side, I mean, is culminating in us taking this step here tonight. Very important to move this well forward. Thank you so much to everybody. I think it's a fantastic opportunity. We're having a chance to do this tonight.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
My microphone's been off the whole time, as it often should be. Motion approved. The consent agenda.
We have 5 items this evening. First is the approval of a 2-year contract renewal with AT&T for Centrex phone lines in the amount not to exceed $350,000. Next is the adoption of a resolution approving 10 new neighborhood enterprise zone homestead applications in the Vine neighborhood and the transfer of 1 previously approved application. Next is the approval of the rehiring of a recent City of Kalamazoo retiree, James Graham, to perform rental housing inspections while multiple inspectors are on leaves of absence on a part-time and temporary basis for a period ending on or before March 8, 2019. Next is the approval of the mayor's appointment and reappointment to the Historic District Commission, the appointment of Daniel Kastner for a term expiring on January 1, 2022, and the reappointment of B.J. Shell for a term expiring on January 1, 2022. And finally, the approval of a request from the New Year's Eve Fest of Kalamazoo to publicly display fireworks from the Epic Center parking structure on Monday, December 31st, 2018 at midnight as part of the New Year's Fest event.
Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to approve the consent agenda and authorize the city manager to sign all documents on behalf of our city. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Cunningham.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Anderson. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. Mr. Manager, the regular agenda.
First is the approval of a 3-year construction contract and purchase order with LD DOSA for the Contract 74 project at the Kalamazoo Water Reclamation Plant in the amount of $14,919,200. In your honor, I'd like to call forward our Public Services Director, James Baker, to make a presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Director.
Good evening, Your Honor, City Commission. To give you some background on this project, this really is 5 key capital projects that are all combined into one contract to facilitate continuation of work, best prices for the market, and strong local opportunities for area contractors. This work includes work identified in the wastewater strategic plan going back from 2010, specific engineering and pilot testing the technologies that was started in 2013, and then detailed design and engineering that occurred through 2016 to 2018. On the display in front of you, you have kind of the highlighted core areas of the plant that are getting worked on. This includes a replacement of a bar screen in the bar screen room, dewatering machines, and dewatering area odor improvements. We also have odor improvements in the fine screen areas. And then we also have motor control center and distribution switchgear work that's occurring throughout the plant, but namely in the tertiary filter area. This work was budgeted and planned out over a series of years, and again coordinates a lot of work and a lot of projects together as one package. This was bid out. We've got several bidders on it. Our low bidder, our recommendation is for LD Dosa, and they're a local Kalamazoo contractor. I can go into more specifics about any one item, but if at this point, I'll wait for questions from the commission.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Baker. Appreciate that. Related to the overall health of our water reclamation plant and other components, can you talk a little bit about that and how you determine which things to include in a capital, this capital improvement plan, and what other things could be coming up, how all that planning works?
Yeah, so we work off sort of planning documents, and then those documents feed into criticality assessments, and then those feed into risk assessments, and ultimately into our capital budget plan. So we've got a lot of work. Our capital improvement plan for the wastewater treatment plant, or the sewer system in general on the wastewater side, averages about $60 million over a 5-year period. So this project is, has got a life of about 3 years. This is just one of several projects that will be ongoing. Namely, this project arises out of some critical need for some solids dewatering equipment, and some critical need for the electric infrastructure, which is the motor control centers and the electric distribution switchgear.
Commissioner Urban.
Well, one of the issues connected with the wastewater treatment plant, a lot of our citizens will want to will be interested in is what will there be some part of this construction contract devoted to dealing with odor control, and what is your hope for that being improved over the course of this contract, or will this contract even address that?
Yeah, this contract has several installations of equipment that address odors. Namely, it's a holistic process change of how we're dealing with sludge. Right now, we're utilizing a belt filter press, and that's kind of an open air environment. We'll be moving and transitioning into centrifuges. That equipment also produces a drier cake, so we'll be going from a finished product of 18% solids to a finished product of 22 to a goal of 24% solids. So that means there's less sludge to haul out to the landfill, which is certainly a great thing.
And less cost too, by the way.
That's also cost. Additionally, there's going to be several permit to install projects that include carbon scrubbers. Each one of these project areas are highlighted with carbon scrubber units that actually exhaust the air out through a carbon unit, and that activated carbon is used to clean up the odor and scrub the odor before it goes out. So there's a lot of work with this project that does directly address odor issues.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cooney? Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Director.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Anyone in the audience wanting to comment on this item, please step to the podium. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Seeing no one, Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to approve. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Cooney.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Cunningham. Discussion? Commissioner Anderson?
I feel like I'm going to be on a positive vein tonight, but all other things happening, one of the most basic things that we do when we've come together in the civilized world and form cities is take care of treating our waste and effluent. And we don't talk about that too much, but one of the great systems we have here in Kalamazoo is our wastewater treatment plant. We're so lucky to have a wastewater treatment plant that does not necessarily have the problems that other sometimes adjacent communities, even like Grand Rapids, have had. And it is a critical, basic component of us, all of us, leading healthy lives here together. So I'm so happy for the work now. Thank you to Manager Ritzma and Director Baker here of this very thoughtful work. It is about time that we are beginning to reinvest in that plant and keep that asset viable and sustainable over the long run. So thanks for your detailed work on this. I'm very happy to support this. And I don't know, it doesn't get headlines, but it's the work we do. I guess it's, yeah, that's good, true. So thank you so much.
Not at all. Commissioner Cunningham.
First, I just want to say thank you, Director Baker, for that explanation in regards to everything that we will be hopefully approving here. I just want to say that, one of my largest concerns is the smell on the east side of Kalamazoo, and so I bring that probably to your table at least quarterly. I want to say that there's a group of individuals in the community, and there's even a committee that has been working diligently to find solutions. And I think that it's a good thing that Director Baker, you've been at least engaged and having conversation in that space. Even before this meeting, I set up a meeting with Director Baker for the new year, and hopefully that's one of the things we get honored to talk about. But that's the primary thing I wanted to bring to the table, is that this is a big issue when you talk about our health in the community. Is also air quality, and I think that trying to have a comprehensive approach is definitely a positive.
Other discussion? Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. G2, Mr. Manager.
Adoption of an ordinance creating a local water system advisory council and approval of the appointment of the following individuals to the council. First, the appointment of Sidney Ellis for a term expiring on December 31, 2020. Next, the appointment of Vern Johnson for a term expiring on December 31, 2019. Next, the appointment of Nancy Stoddard for a term expiring on December 31, 2020. And the appointment of Thomas Wheat for a term expiring on December 31, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Anyone wanting to comment on this item, please step to the podium. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Hearing none, Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to adopt the ordinance and approve the appointments. Is there a motion? Moved by Commissioner Urban.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Cooney. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. Mr. Manager.
Next, we have adoption of a resolution affirming the adoption of the 2018 Imagine Eastside Neighborhood Plan as a subplan to the City of Kalamazoo's comprehensive plan. And we have a presentation being given. Go ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening. So I'm very excited to bring Imagine Eastside to you today. Imagine Eastside is a neighborhood plan born out of a collaborative effort between...
I'm going to have you introduce yourself and what you do for the city.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm Katie Riley, neighborhood activator. Okay, now we'll start over. So Imagine Eastside is a neighborhood plan for, and I do neighborhood planning with neighborhoods, if that, just in case. So a plan born out of a collaborative effort between Kalamazoo Eastside Neighborhood Association, KENA, and the Eastside Network, ENET. ENET is a collaborative group of nonprofit service providers, city staff, and residents that live or work in the Eastside. The Imagine Eastside process took feedback from previous plans and Imagine Kalamazoo and confirmed or added to those goals and information. It was a very responsive process, so we had a community meeting, and at that community meeting we heard that community meetings weren't the best way to engage residents, and so we shifted and worked with partners to identify some events that we could pop up at and do engagement that way. And then furthering that collaboration, since the planning process has kind of come to an end, there have been a couple projects that have already started. So an example is Western Michigan University nutrition class is looking at food access for all of the age groups on the east side because there is a big chapter on food access in the plan, and residents kind of lifted that up as an important issue. And another example is a project to looking at building and placing bus benches at bus stops in the neighborhood. Again, a big priority that we heard from residents through this process. And so I'd like to introduce Pat Taylor, Director of KENA, to talk a little bit more about the neighborhood plan. Thank you.
Hi, I am April Ohlin, and I am the Vice President of the Eastside Neighborhood Association. I'm also a member of ENET. Things that I also live on the east side, have for 30-some years. Things that we would like to see happen on the east side. The east side of Kalamazoo is the main thoroughfare coming into Kalamazoo. Unless you take Gull Road or East Michigan, you're not going to get into the heart of Kalamazoo. We would like to see the main corridor on East Main cleaned up. There used to be thriving businesses there. We need to bring that back into our town. This is our town. This is our side of the town. It belongs to all of us, not just a few people that are trying to do whatever they're doing. We need to make it for everybody so they feel safe there, so they have places they can go to shop. There used to be a thriving library there, thriving drugstore, the in-between inn. The children used to walk to the Dairy Queen. There used to be a laundromat. There actually used to be 2 laundromats on East Main. Everything is gone. We need to bring that back. That is my hope, and that is the hope of many others on the east side. If anybody were to look at vanished Kalamazoo, just read what's happening now with Lorna Chapman passing away, John Treestrom passing away. All of these people that meant so much, we need to bring that love back to our community. That's my hope for Imagine Kalamazoo. Thank you.
Questions? Thank you. Katie, is that the end of okay. Anyone wanting to speak on the East Side plan, please step forward. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Seeing no one, Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to adopt the resolution. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Anderson.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Urban. Discussion? Commissioner Cunningham.
I'll beat you this time. You know, Eastside neighborhood is near and dear to my heart. I thank you guys for putting in the work that needs to be done. You know, oftentimes people look to a certain body such as the commission and have a huge expectation. But with Imagine Kalamazoo, we have put the burden back on the communities to say, hey, let's work together and let's build together. So I'm really excited for that. I'm really excited for the opportunity and actually digging into this plan and creating that vision. You know, I was there when Treestrom's was still there. I was there when, you know, the Eastside Community Center was still there, and that's something that me and Don and the mayor, have been working towards really just, you know, figuring what opportunities we have there and trying to grow from there. So thank you guys for putting in all of the work that you have been doing and will continue to do.
I'm going to take a moment because this is where I grew up, just like Commissioner Cunningham. That's why you kept seeing both of us nodding our heads, you know, in between Inn and the Dairy Queen where we used to go. And the laundromat where I used to get that big bubble gum out of the vending machine when Mom gave me a few dimes, or when I found a few in her room. You know, that was a pretty special place, still is a pretty special place. Our smallest neighborhood that has some really cool parks, Sherwood Park and Rockwell Park, that we've invested in and will continue to invest. And the opportunities of the East Main Corridor are huge, with properties that are there and probably opportunities that are sometimes seen and not seen. So I'm excited about the East Side. My mama still lives there, so I know she's participated, I heard, similar to her son's voice. I'm sure she was there, and look forward to all the great things that you folks have planned, and look forward to supporting those plans for years to come. So nice job, all of you, on this. Commissioner Urban?
Thank you, Mayor Hopewell. I've attended a couple of the meetings on the East Side and got to know the folks who are doing the neighborhood planning. Most of it was last year. And what struck me about the East Side is the topography of that area is really gorgeous. Because you have a steep hill there and a great view overlooking the city in two directions, the downtown part of the city, that whole area is really ripe for being reinvested in. It won't come back exactly the same way it was, although we'd like to restore the feeling of the neighborhood that we had, that was there, say, up through the 60s maybe. I really think we're setting the framework for that possibility. Without a neighborhood plan that is embraced by the people who live in the neighborhood, it's very hard for anybody to see a path forward with some kind of security about any investment they would make in the area. As you know, some of you know, there are some little houses being built on East Michigan, which are within the city, that are going to make it possible for a few more people to live affordably in the community in that area. There's some wonderful older houses that are really, I hope we can maintain their appearance and quality and improve it, because it's a beautiful neighborhood. It's what what we think of when we think about Kalamazoo. I'm excited about the new energy that's going into this plan, and I'm definitely going to be voting to approve it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes. Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. We are now at G4. Mr. Manager.
Adoption of a resolution affirming the adoption of the 2018 Imagine Vine Neighborhood Plan as a subplan to the City of Kalamazoo's comprehensive plan.
All right, I'm back again. So Imagine Vine was created in collaboration with the Vine Neighborhood Association. Residents from Vine had already given us a lot of great feedback during the Imagine Kalamazoo process, and a really good base to go off of. And so from that, we were able to create a neighborhood plan. And through this process, we also collaborated with Michigan State University and had a group of urban planning students do kind of that initial reaffirming what we heard in Imagine Kalamazoo, engagement, and kind of drafting of the plan. And their work actually received an award from the Michigan Association of Planning that they did for us. And then again, this planning process built a lot of momentum in the neighborhood and has led to some exciting projects already kicking off. Those include some bike racks being installed in the neighborhood or being designed by a local artist to go in the neighborhood, as well as a mural project, because we heard that art is a really important thing for Vine. And so I would like to introduce Steve Walsh from the Vine Neighborhood Association to talk a little bit more about Imagine Vine. Thank you.
I want to have everybody on deck, so when you're ready.
Thank you, Katie.
Good evening.
Excuse me. I'm Steve Walsh. I am a Vine neighborhood resident, and I've had the privilege of working for the Neighborhood Association for the past 12 years. I want to thank the committee for passing the Eastside plan. I think that's exciting, and I know that they put in a lot of hard work, and I'm looking forward to seeing them in action as well. To echo Katie's thoughts, we had a wonderful opportunity to work with Katie at Community Planning and Development, as well as a group of students from Michigan State, and as Katie mentioned, they won an award. They had over 200 points of contact with individuals within Vine. We had open houses, we had art hops, we had many opportunities online. There were a number of opportunities for folks to participate if they wanted to. About 4 years ago, the Neighborhood Association had a wonderful opportunity to purchase the former site of Kalamazoo Neighborhood Housing Services at 802 South Westnedge, which was critical for what we want to do for our corridor development. However, it also was a challenge for capacity at the Neighborhood Association to do everything that we wanted to do. One of the things that's very exciting for me is all the data and research that came back from this. This is just crucial for what we do at the associations for establishing blueprints and roadmaps for where we go from here. And as I mentioned, over the last few years, as we were taking advantage of other opportunities, it was a challenge sometimes to have the capacity to get that feedback and data. That's why this is so valuable. I feel like we've got a wonderful roadmap moving forward. We've got a number of new contacts and people that are within the Neighborhood Association that I think are advocates or devotees to the community. We heard from the top priorities, the housing affordability, the improved walkability, and the access to arts. And as Katie mentioned, we've got some murals going up already. I think, too, the fact that the adoption of the resolution of approving 10 new NEZ houses within Vine, I think, is a testament to what's going on within the community and greater Kalamazoo as a whole. So I come to you and advocate for the passing of this master plan.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you, sir.
Welcome. Thank you.
Anyone wanting to comment on this item, the Vine plan, please step forward. You have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Seeing no one, Commissioners, requested action is a motion to adopt the resolution. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Anderson.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Cunningham. Discussion? Commissioner Urban?
Well, what I said about the Eastside neighborhood area applies to this neighborhood as well. This one is a little bit more centrally located. Many more people pass through it just going through down in Park Street into town and Westnedge on the way out of town. But the Eastside neighborhood has many of the same kinds of houses, much built up much during the same period of time in Michigan's heyday from 1880 or 1890 to 1920 or so. All the things I said, except for the topography, apply to Vine as well, and I wish all their success for it as well.
Clerk Borling, roll call, please.
Commissioner Cooney?
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes. Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. G5, Mr. Mann.
Adoption of a resolution issuing a moratorium on rezoning and variance requests and new building permits for projects that require site plan approval on properties with the Natural Features Protection designation as mapped on the land development map in the 2025 master plan, except those properties under the oversight of the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality and the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, United States Environmental Protection Agency, or the City of Kalamazoo Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. This moratorium would be effective immediately and be in place for a period of up to 6 months.
Anyone in the audience wanting to comment on this item, please step forward, give us your name and whether you live within the city. You'll have 4 minutes. Also, please sign in after or before your comments as time allows. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. I'm Duane Hampton. I live outside of Kalamazoo. I am Associate Professor of Geological and Environmental Sciences at Western Michigan University. I have served as a member of the Asylum Lake Policy and Management Council since 2005 and currently serve as the chair of that council. I speak to you in 2 capacities today. My first comments are as a private citizen. The proposed 4-month moratorium on development is consistent with the goal of the Asylum Lake Policy and Management Council that the development of property around the Asylum Lake Preserve should be done in keeping with zoning ordinances and the overlays that are being formulated. The 6-month moratorium would provide additional time to develop the rules that development in Kalamazoo should follow. I served on an ad hoc committee that met on February 14th and May 14th with the owner of the former Vermeulen property, Haji Tehrani. The intention of that committee was to advise the city on the application and interpretation of the natural features overlay or protection overlay as it applied to the former Vermeulen property. He was concerned, Haji was concerned then, that the overlay we were trying to create was not done, and that he was stuck trying to develop the property in keeping with rules that weren't written. I sympathize with him. He is invested in Kalamazoo's future as we would like others to do. In the interest of the future of the Kalamazoo community, we need this moratorium to be used to expeditiously put together the overlay rules. The City of Kalamazoo, in suggesting this 6-month moratorium, should commit to making the overlay zoning a priority for the City Planning Department. If I were Haji Tehrani, I might see another 6-month delay as an unconstitutional taking. I don't think Mr. Tehrani will sue the City Council for that because he wants you to approve that development. But he has a right to expect that you will resource this rulemaking effort and move it along as soon as possible. And here's my point. The city should commit all resources needed by the City Planning Department, which may need more staff since they've experienced turnover and retirements. Passing the moratorium without the will to resource it would be unethical. The rest of my comments are as chair of the Asylum Lake Policy and Management Committee. On November 9th, I sent the following message to Christina Anderson at the Kalamazoo City Planning Department, and I'd like to give you a copy of that. And basically what it says, the Asylum Lake Planning and Management Council, or the council, was established in 2004 as a partnership between Western Michigan University and several community stakeholders invested in the future of the Asylum Lake Preserve, or the Preserve. The council was formally charged by the WMU Board of Trustees with carrying out a set of conservation restrictions, namely to keep the preserve as an asset to the greater Kalamazoo community to promote ecosystem integrity and natural aesthetics. As stewards of this natural area, the council is concerned about the potential impact of the intended development at the northwest corner of the preserve and on its ecosystems, including Asylum Lake itself and the associated water quality and biological diversity, the old large diameter trees at the top of the slope on the lake's north side and associated biological diversity, and overall the diversity of animal and plant populations living throughout the preserve. The council has members who are experts in the environment and would be happy to freely provide information as the development evolves. Some of these members have served on the advisory committee to city planners and hope to continue to be involved.
Sir, your time has expired. And just for everyone to know, I'm going to be pretty strict on the time because we have a lot of people that want to speak. So the clerk will take it. Next, please. Good evening.
My name is Craig Lubin. I live in the city of Kalamazoo in the Winchell neighborhood. I'm a member of the Miller Johnson law firm. Our offices are over in the Radisson. And I'm here today in my capacity as counsel for Haji Tehrani and his company DNS Stadium Drive. As the prior speaker indicated, Mr. Tehrani owns the property on the southeast corner of Drake and Stadium, kitty corner from the Costco development. He acquired that property in October of 2017. Over the past year, he has been working with the city in various groups to develop the property and to get it appropriately rezoned. Today, we submitted an application to rezone the property from residential to commercial. In the city's 2025 master plan, it shows this property as commercial. So the application is consistent with the master plan. We are asking today that the City Commission clarify that the proposed moratorium does not apply to Mr. Tarani's application or project, and here is why. As I said, he has spent about a year working with the city and various interest groups to develop this project. More specifically, on December 20, 2017, he met with Christina Anderson, Sharon Ferraro, Mr. O'Neill, and Mr. McAndrew from the MDEQ to talk about the projects and his plan for it. They said one of the things he needed to do was to meet with them to talk with various groups to talk about this natural features protection. So a meeting was scheduled by Ms. Anderson for February 14, 2018 to have that discussion. There was a large group invited to that meeting. And we asked Ms. Anderson, why is such a large group invited? And she said in her email to us, I am convinced that all of the stakeholders are present who are interested in that natural features protection. So they were there, and at that meeting, various questions were raised and agreements were made as to what Mr. Tarani would do and what they would do. And he came up with a tree plan, a tree survey, a plan for the stormwater control for the system. He developed a site plan, and he had numerous meetings over the course of the next year. As I said, first meeting February 14, first meeting was December 20, meeting with the group February 14, another meeting on May 14, another meeting on July 3. Each one of those meetings working with the stakeholders to try to make sure that his plan met with all of the considerations so that it would be appropriate for this natural protection area requirement. We learned on Friday that after a year of this effort and tens of thousands of dollars spent and at least a half dozen meetings with the interest group, that now the city was going to propose an additional several-month delay. We are asking, as I said, that the City Commission make clear that this particular moratorium does not apply to his project because, as I said, he has been dealing with these issues and the city regarding this natural protection area for the entire year. He has responded to all the concerns, and it would not be fair to him after a year to say you've got to wait an additional 6 months while we attempt to clarify further what the requirements are, particularly when the people who are invited are the exact same ones he's been meeting with and working with. So that is our request. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Laurie Holmes. I live at 2417 High Point Drive, which is very close, in fact, adjacent to the preserve. We are pleased that at last the city is going to pay some attention to drawing up the natural features protection overlay, because many of us have been asking and asking and asking why, when there were commercial opportunity signs up on a piece of property that as yet had only been zoned residential, why there was not this overlay, which was supposed to be part of the Kalamazoo, Imagine Kalamazoo plan being put into action. So hopefully, if this moratorium goes through, there will be a committee that's going to work on it. If it doesn't apply to the Asylum Lake Preserve, which is one of the most essential natural features, not only in the city, but in the whole region, something is very, very wrong. If you look into the audience, you will see there are many, many people here. Contrary to what Mr. Lubin has said, and just about everything he said is absolutely true, the general public has not been given access to this project. It's gone on in various places with small committees, meeting with the developer, and the planner has been very conscientious in responding to individual emails that have been sent to her. But the knowledge about this development has not been spread through the community except by the valiant efforts of some of the individual organizations whom you'll be hearing from tonight. So the committee, if it will exist to form this protection, needs to be made up not only of experts on water and plants and animals and soil, because the preserve is all those things, but it's more than the sum of those parts. It's a sanctuary for people to get into nature, to be renewed, to get peace from the confusion and overload that characterizes all of our lives now. It is too essential to the goodness of life in this community to have restaurant, apartment buildings, car wash, right up to the edge of the lake. And if you look at the plan, that is the proposed development plan, it goes right up to the edge of the lake. So it's not even only the water, the birds, the plants, which are of course the most important things, but it's what this area brings to the local citizens. So I advocate for citizen involvement and for transparency, and certainly for the hope that this moratorium is going to be in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. We have a lot of people that want to talk. We want everyone to have an opportunity. I ask that you follow the rules of the commission, which are in the back of the agenda. We don't allow for applauding and celebrating. Let people have their moment to speak. You can feel good about it. You can do a silent one. That's okay. Ma'am.
Hello, my name is Jenna Anton, and I am a resident of the city and a WMU student. So I stand before you today representing the over 20,000 students here at WMU, as I serve as a cabinet member of the Western Student Association. I am our sustainability chair. So I am very concerned about this property because it is extremely important for students in our community. It is a very popular place for students to spend their time in recreation activities, hiking, hammocking, spending time in nature that is not extremely available to us on our own campus. I think that as we are looking at providing these protections, we need more time to decide how we are going to look at natural spaces, especially those that we have decided are protected, and that this resolution would provide us with that time to look at what we want our expectations to be. So we're not saying yes or no right away, but we're deciding what those expectations really are. And I think that that's really important to take that time. So I just want to urge you all today to pass this resolution, and I just wanted to express the importance of this property to WMU students.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Philip Nicklin. I live at 1618 Grove Street in Kalamazoo. I have been a Kalamazoo resident for 49 years. I am representing myself tonight, but also the Audubon Society of Kalamazoo, of which I am vice president. The Audubon Society of Kalamazoo has been active since 1945 and is the oldest local group concerned with nature and the environment. The society has over 300 members in Southwest Michigan who share an interest in wild birds, nature, and the environment. We strongly support the city's development of a natural features protection overlay for the purpose of aiding the planning department in evaluating the wisdom of approving development of environmentally sensitive lands within the city of Kalamazoo. And when development is approved, for restricting and guiding such activities to provide maximum protection to ecosystem values. Hence, we urge the City Commission to approve the planning staff's request for a moratorium on new developments so that the natural features protection overlay can be written into the Imagine Kalamazoo plan. And I want to emphasize, we also urge that this moratorium include the proposed project under review for the former Vermilion property adjacent to the Asylum Lake Preserve. Asylum Lake is an environmental and ecosystem jewel for the city of Kalamazoo, and we must do all we can to make sure that the ecosystem integrity is maintained for this lake and adjacent preserve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Sherry Sims. I live in the city, and I am a member of the Asylum Lake Association, and I've been with that association since 1999. And so I've seen a lot of changes with that, and so much progress with the development of the Management Council at Western Michigan University. And I just want to reiterate that this community has put a lot of time, effort, and money, and for good reason, into this property that is being discussed. Western Michigan has spent years and a lot of good faith effort for it. The Kalamazoo Foundation has put a lot of good faith money and effort over the years for this as well. So not only are the citizens interested in this, but we as a city and our major institutions have already invested in this. So I want to also say that in seeing that happen, I've always been so pleased that Kalamazoo, I've only lived here for 40 years, or almost 40 years, is such a forward-thinking community. And I want you to remember that and to keep, hopefully, you know, that dynamic in mind in considering this resolution. We cannot afford, I don't believe, to take our, I think we must take our time with this and do the natural features correctly. I was so thrilled to see that in the Imagine Kalamazoo plan and in the, you know, the future use plan, because it's so important. But if you don't do it right with the most precious property that we have right from the beginning, what is the point? What I don't want to see happen, I know you have a hard balancing act to do. You know, we need revenue, but we also need places to be. I don't want to see what often happens in development areas like this is, whoops, oh, sorry, you know, I'll pay the fine later. We can't afford that for this property, and I just want you to really consider that this resolution is a good idea to stop and think and take the time with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for meeting with us tonight. My name is Peter Kushner. I live in the Winchell neighborhood of Kalamazoo. Tonight I'm here speaking as the president of the Oakland Drive Winchell Neighborhood Association Board. Our board has united with the boards of the Oakwood Neighborhood Association, the Asylum Lake Preservation Association, the Parkland Village Association, and the Woods Lake Association to submit to you a joint statement of support for the proposed resolution. The previously named associations and neighborhood interest groups strongly endorse the resolution to issue a 6-month moratorium on rezoning and variance requests and new building permits for projects that require site plan approval on properties with the Natural Features Protection, or NFP designation, as mapped on the future land development map in the 2025 master plan. We support the city's desire to allocate the time necessary for city staff to finalize the NFP policy and development standards to ensure consistent, cohesive, and sensible development for both applicants and the community, to address economic, environmental concerns, and to align the policy with the community vision outlined in the 2025 master plan and strategic vision. We agree with the assessment that irreversible environmental damage in NFP designated lands could occur without an effective NFP policy and enforceable standards in place ahead of any development. We also recommend that the process that results in an NFP policy includes the input of neighborhood associations, local environmental interest groups, and interested city residents at large. Thank you for your consideration, and our groups would welcome the opportunity to work with city staff on this important issue to find a solution that can work effectively and fairly for all parties. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Marcia Wallace. I live at 3636 Hoover in the Oakwood neighborhood, and I'm here as the president of the Oakwood Neighborhood Association. And we would like to, as Mr. Cushing just said, give our support to the moratorium, particularly on the Vermeulen property that has been discussed. We are very interested, and our neighbors are very interested in this particular property around Asylum Lake. Many of us use it for walking our dogs, just going and riding our bikes. It's a jewel of the neighborhood. And not only our neighborhood, but the other neighborhoods around it use it constantly. So we would like this to be a very thoughtful process, and during this 6 months, we really would like a policy to be adopted so that we know how to go forward on this with the least amount of environmental impact that we could possibly have. So thank you for listening to me. Good night.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Christopher Bovid. I'm a resident of the city. I live on Lorraine Avenue. I'm the current president of the Woods Lake Association. As Mr. Kushner indicated, the Woods Lake Association had considered the letter and decided to sign off on that as well. We believe that the NFP needs to have defined standards. I can tell you, I'm an attorney in Kalamazoo as well. I have clients who are developers and builders. They also want to know what this is going to mean for the properties that they're looking at redeveloping that are adjacent to NFP lands that are marked on the future development map. It needs to be well defined. It's unfortunate that it sort of wasn't defined already, but the bottom line is this needs to be done sooner rather than later. You know, a lot of focus tonight has been on the Vermeulen property, but the bottom line is this is going to keep coming up if those standards are not defined. Probably one of the next things that might come up was with respect to the Consumers Credit Union property at the northwest corner of Oakland Drive and Parkview that our association has talked to you about already. But that property is on Woods Lake, or you know, is certainly adjacent to it, about 50 feet over the water line in height, right? So basically what happens at that site too is going to be impacted by what the Natural Features Protection Overlay means and how that's interpreted and applied to these properties when they're redeveloped. My own clients, like I said, they have already been asking me what this means for some of the properties that they're looking at redeveloping. And the bottom line is I can't define that for them because there is no, as far as I've seen, no written standards for it yet. So we're definitely in support of that. The only thing I'd like to add is with respect specifically to Mr. Lubin's comments and the efforts Mr. Trani has taken to sort of work with the community. From what I've seen so far, even though they have taken steps to meet with people and give at least sort of preliminary conceptual information, usually when we have specific questions about it, the comments are, well, these are just concepts. We don't have site-specific information to give you yet, right? So to the extent that he's saying that there have been agreements made, et cetera, between committees or community members, from my standpoint, I don't see how there can be these agreements made when everything is sort of conceptual in nature anyway. You'll probably hear more about it tonight, but one of the issues that we've been looking at is the slope of the southern slope of the Vermeulen property that heads down to the lake, right? The lines that have been drawn on the maps that we've seen don't necessarily match with the topographical maps of the property. It looks like there's a potential for the developer to go in and essentially remove at least portions of the top of the slope, leading down to the lake. And that's not going to be acceptable, certainly to the majority of the people that have already spoken in favor of the moratorium here tonight. But my suggestion is that you have community support to make sure that these standards are made. Whether it applies to the Vermeulen property or not, it needs to happen, and we appreciate your support in that regard.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Paul Manstrom, 806 Northampton in Kalamazoo. I'm the current chair of the City of Kalamazoo Environmental Concerns Committee, and it's in that capacity that I'm addressing you tonight. The progress on including a natural features protection overlay in the zoning code and the potential commercial development of the former Vermeulen property have been agenda items at ECC meetings for the better part of this year. In October, after much consideration and discussion of the issues, the committee voted unanimously to recommend to the City Commission that the development and approval of an NFP overlay be expedited so that it was in place prior to processing an application for rezoning of the Vermeulen property. The ECC recognizes that new commercial and residential development is vital to the city's economic health. Such development brings both jobs to the community and additional tax revenue so the city can maintain the essential services it provides to its residents and businesses. But there needs to be a balance between these benefits and the need to protect and preserve other assets in the city. Assets that contribute to the quality of life and make Kalamazoo a city that attracts people to live and work here and keeps them here. That is what the current Imagine Kalamazoo 2025 plan is all about. Included in those city assets that need this protection are the remaining areas with natural features. The master plan recognizes these areas by designating them as such in the future land use plan. That recognition implies that these areas in our community can have vulnerable ecological and geological characteristics that require additional protections beyond what is currently provided by local ordinances and state regulations. Asylum Lake, which is contiguous to the Vermeulen property, is perhaps the ultimate example of this in our city. A natural features protection overlay is consistent with the spirit and intent of the Imagine Kalamazoo 2025 plan. The ECC believes that having the overlay in place is a much higher priority than any pending development. A 6-month moratorium on any rezoning or variance requests affecting designated natural features areas is consistent with the ECC's earlier recommendation. It is a reasonable request that will give the city planner and her colleagues time to develop the overlay and ensure that adequate requirements are in place to protect the delicate ecosystems and geography of our natural areas for the benefit of both current and future generations of Kalamazoo residents. The Environmental Concerns Committee strongly urges commissioners to vote to approve the moratorium, the proposed moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Hopewell and City Commission. I'm happy to be here. My name is Mitch Leto. I'm a city resident here in Kalamazoo and homeowner in the Vine neighborhood. And I'm here to support the moratorium on rezoning and support the natural features protection overlay because I believe is it a very important decision that should be taken in a thoughtful, thorough manner. And I also work in ecology and conservation, and one of the things that I do is try to repair natural areas that have been damaged. And one of the things that I learn over and over again is that once places are degraded, the degradation is very easy to create, but incredibly difficult and expensive to reverse. And so another reason that this should be taken very carefully. And in my work, I see a lot of beautiful land across Southwest Michigan, but Asylum Lake is one of my favorite areas and probably the natural area that I visit the most. It's a very large, intact natural area within striking distance of the city. And if you go around to other cities in our country, lots of them have small developed parks. That's a very common thing. But large, intact natural areas are something that are very much unique. I visit this preserve. I go running there. I walk dogs there. I go hiking there. I go bird watching there. Parking lots are always full. This is such a beloved place. And I personally benefit a lot from this intact natural area, but I believe the more pertinent question is what the community at large will stand to benefit from keeping the larger ecosystem there intact and the precedents that it sets for future pending developments. I also recently returned from a trip of a lifetime around the United States, visiting national parks and cities. And one of the things that we found that the cities that are growing the most with young folks and new ideas and development as well, these places have an embedded value of conservation. From Austin, Texas to Asheville, North Carolina, these places have large intact green spaces and corridors that are of great value to residents. More and more people aren't necessarily tied down by locations that offer jobs. They're able to work remotely and choosing where to live based on quality of life and access to resources like these. They don't move to these locations because there's a particular grocery store, car wash, credit union, that sort of thing. It has to be a larger sort of culture and quality of life. And I recognize and I'm really excited that Kalamazoo is growing so fast and it's poised for more growth. And I think it's in the process. Continue to decide what kind of city it's going to be for the future. We have the Kalamazoo River Valley Trail, we have the Kalamazoo Nature Center, we have a lot of great natural areas, but these decisions will definitely echo into the future. And will we continue to preserve and conserve natural areas like this for the quality of its residents, or will we fail to defend natural areas against short-sighted gains and sort of ill-conceived plans? So, thanks.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Diana Morton Thompson. I live in the Winchell neighborhood. I'm a registered professional geologist and a member of the Natural Features Protection Technical Committee. But I'm here this evening to speak to you as a citizen. First, I want to show clear support for the proposed Natural Features Protection Moratorium resolution. Second, I'd like to express my sincere thanks to Christina Anderson, Rebecca Kick, and Jim Ritzma for crafting and making the recommendations given in this resolution to the City Council. And third, I'd like to ask City Council to vote yes this evening to pass the Natural Features Protection Moratorium resolution as is currently written to help protect and enhance all of our neighborhoods. In regard to the Vermeulen property, personally, I'm a little bit mystified by the comments the gentleman representing the out-of-state developer made. In my opinion, key recommendations given in the Natural Features Protection Committee's correspondence were basically ignored. And many of the questions that were answered, by this group, the questions that were answered, questions that were given to them by the neighbors, by the neighborhood associations, really were not answered, or they were answered so obliquely as to really lose all hope of meaning. In my experience, it doesn't take much thought to clear-cut a piece of property, use a bulldozer to obliterate the natural terrain, so that all that's left is an unnatural, flat, desolate, and dirt-covered space. But sustainable development, that takes thought, that takes time. Robust economic development and good environmental stewardship are not mutually exclusive. This can and it does happen, but only where there is the thoughtful integration of science, public policy, and community vision. This requires intelligent, thoughtful, and caring people. And I'd like to believe that there are intelligent, thoughtful, and caring people here tonight. And I believe that there are intelligent, thoughtful, caring people throughout the city of Kalamazoo. I ask the City Council to respect the ideals and the vision of their constituents as manifested in the Imagine Kalamazoo process and in the master plan. I ask the City Council to vote yes to pass this proposal as it is written tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Tom Small. I live at 2502 Wade Avenue in Kalamazoo. I'm a founding member of Wild Ones, dedicated to preserving and enhancing biodiversity. And I'm here to speak on behalf of myself and those beings who have no voices here tonight, the other creatures on whom our lives depend. And those creatures depend upon natural features, and biodiversity is vanishing locally, nationally, and globally. Organizations such as the World Wildlife Federation agree that approximately 60% of the Earth's creatures have vanished since 1970. I've lived in Kalamazoo since 1966 for 52 years. I'm 86 years old. I've seen a lot happen in that time in Kalamazoo, much of it good, but I've seen a great deal of loss. All up and down Stadium Drive, I have seen development after development, vanishing after vanishing of natural areas, of natural features, of oak savanna, of wetlands, of all kinds of creatures. We are not exempt from that 60% loss of biomass, not of species, but of local populations. And biodiversity loss is always local, and the local loss is where extinction begins. And it begins with small patches of land that are connected somehow to larger patches of land, and those are vanishing. Local populations are the key to preserving biodiversity. Diversity is important, but bio is more important. Bio is life itself, and the life is local. This city is to be commended on what it's doing with regard to environmental protection. There's much that's going forward, and that's being done right, and that's being done thoughtfully, but there's not enough, and there's not enough time, and we need as we can have, and we need to proceed as expeditiously and as carefully as we can, because we have a crisis on our hands globally and locally. Please consider those voiceless who are not here tonight, but on which our lives and our futures as a total community depend. Consider their importance to us all and the total community of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Rebecca McCleary, and I live on Grand Avenue in Kalamazoo. And I'm not in the science field, I'm in the social justice field, so I can't really speak to biodiversity that much or anything like that, but I come to you as a mother and as a native of Kalamazoo. I grew up going to Asylum Lake, walking around when I was a kid, like 45 years ago, and Kleinstuck Preserve, and enjoying so much of Kalamazoo's natural surroundings. And back then, I mean, there wasn't a Walmart out on 9th Street. I mean, we were much smaller, right? And you could get to nature much easier. But as we've grown, some of the things that we've preserved have been the Calhaven Trail, the Kleinstuck Preserve, and Asylum Lake, and so on. And I left for 20 years after I graduated from high school. I went to Eugene, Oregon. Beautiful, right? Portland. I lived in Portland. I lived in Lexington, Kentucky, in the Bluegrass. Many beautiful, beautiful places. But I chose to bring myself and my husband and my 4 children back to Kalamazoo because it's progressive, because people here care about the environment, because we have such easy access to these natural areas. My children learn by going into the preserves. They learn not only math and science by studying the wetlands and counting the trees and graphing them, but they also learn poetry. They sit in, the kids at Kazoo School, the kids at Nature's Way, the kids all over the city go into these natural environments and they learn, right? And, you know, the gentleman who spoke earlier, the attorney from Miller Johnson, I understand he's doing his job, but, you know, it really makes me wonder when he says it would not be fair to the developer to make him wait on this rezoning proposal. I mean, he purchased the land that was zoned residential. This is my understanding, correct? He purchased land zoned residential, and now he's pushing back, saying it would not be fair to make him wait. My question is, would it be fair to my children? Would it be fair to any of our children or any of us who enjoy going out and learning in these areas, who walk our dogs, who run, who you know, de-stress? Would it be fair to any of us? And what kind of legacy are we leaving our children if we go ahead and, one, pass the, you know, if the rezoning that he requested today were approved, and if we don't pass this moratorium and have really smart growth? I'm all about Kalamazoo growing and thriving. You know, that's why I brought my family back here. And I want my kids to want to stay here. I want young people to want to stay here. And as we know, climate change is real, okay? And young people care about the environment, and we have to care about it too, and we have to preserve the, you know, what is special, most special about Kalamazoo for future generations. So please vote in favor of the moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Hello. My name's Sharon Deaver, and I'm a citizen of Kalamazoo. I believe that it is in the best interest of the land and our future environment to have the natural feature overlay in place, not only where practical, but with actual written policy, so that we are ensuring that there are not more environmental disruptions to our ecosystem caused by corporations without developers being held accountable during these processes. The parcel of the land touching Asylum Lake Preserve on Stadium and Drake is especially important because of its proximity to the Asylum Lake Preserve. I believe that it is especially important that we are able to make sure that these accidents aren't going to happen in such vital places. So I also hope that you will consider the moratorium so that we can take time to put policy in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Hopewell. My name is Paul McNellis, and I do not live in Kalamazoo. I live in Mattawan. But I do a lot of work at a lot of the natural areas here in Kalamazoo, Asylum Lake and Kleinstock, to be specific. I am also on the board of directors for the Stewards of Kleinstock, which is a 10-year organization that have been caring for that property in conjunction with Western Michigan University. And the board specifically supports this moratorium. That's from Kleinstock. That's thing one. Thing two, I am also on the committee, or on the advisory committee for the natural features protection overlay. We've made a lot of good progress. I kind of got the notion from some speakers that they are wanting this committee to get together to do things like that. We've already done a lot of stuff. And we've met with Mr. Haji on behalf, at the request of Christina Anderson. And we've given him some ideas, knowing that we don't have any teeth in the game as far as codes, building codes and that. But we would like to. And we've made a lot of good progress, especially in the field of geology. Professor Hampton has talked about that. He was the first speaker. Diana Morton Thompson, also professional geologists, come up with some very, very good language, and we'd like to propose that as some of the codes or some of the have-to-do things for people that want to develop property next to a natural feature in Kalamazoo. But there's more to talk about. We need some more time in order for us to come up with a whole proposal that can have some teeth in it and actually do some good as far as plant pathology, as far as history, as far as natural
natural areas and what they define as, and how to maintain them, how to keep them going. Mitch Lateau talked also here. He's from Southwest Michigan Land Conservancy. I don't think he said that, but he's a citizen and he lives over on Village. I know Mitch very well because I volunteer for that group too also. And they have 52 preserves that they look after. So Mitch is concerned, as I am concerned, and we know what we're talking about. Natural Features Protection Overlay Committee is made up of scientists and professionals that either have specific or general knowledge in the conservation area. And we would like to have a little more time to work on the Natural Features Protection Overlay and to make it a real thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Tom Holmes from 2417 High Point Drive in Kalamazoo. Very quickly, I just want to say when this Natural Features Protection Committee meets, I hope that it will include not just the scientific people, not just those kinds of experts, but people who talk about, from the community, about what's important to them in terms of natural features protection. What does that mean to the community? It's not just a scientific thing, it's something that has to do with people and their perceptions. I know you listen to a lot of folks. I'll keep it short. Thanks, bye.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Your Honor, Commissioners. My name is Bonnie Alkema, and I live in Parkview Hills. And the people of Parkview are very interested in saying that we also would like you to vote positively for this moratorium and give us more time to work on this. And we would like to have the property at the corner of Drake and Stadium, the little white house, considered as part of this moratorium also for that development. And as people speak about Asylum Lake, I want to say it isn't just Asylum Lake, but Asylum Lake, Big Asylum, flows into Little Asylum. And that water goes underneath Parkview Avenue into Cherry Creek, which is behind my condo, and into all the water in Parkview Hills, including the west branch of the Portage Creek, which goes to the Kalamazoo River and therefore to Lake Michigan. Please vote yes and include the Little White House.
Thank you. Anyone else? Don't hesitate. Good evening.
My name is Haji Tarani. I happen to be the owner of this property that all the people have spoken in behalf of. First of all, my apology to everyone here for our inability to have properly communicated to you our intent for this property, as we did meet with the heads of your neighborhoods about 2 months ago, maybe a month and a half ago, and presented to them the plans that we have. When I bought this property about a year ago, or over a year ago, I was told that there was a portion of this property that would be an NFP, which I didn't really know what that meant, but then I was invited to these meetings starting in February, and I was told by Christina, Ms. Anderson, that basically all the heads of various groups, ALPA, MDNR, city staff, Western Michigan, were in presence. And so the plans were developed for this property in connection with all the feedback that we received from them. So my failure, my confusion today is, so after a year of waiting and working with NFP, though I know it's not part of the ordinance, we voluntarily agreed to comply with the requirements of NFP and what they told us. So although it's not part of the ordinance yet, we have agreed to comply with it. So I fail to understand what waiting another 6 months would accomplish. I don't disagree that not perhaps, but I don't disagree that we should present to you in person.
Sir, direct your comments at the commission.
Certainly, I just want to make sure that I apologize, I guess if that's the forum you would like me to follow, I'll follow that. But we certainly have failed to properly meet with all the heads, all the individuals, not certainly the heads, and our intent would be that we would do that. Look, this is a private property, as it was when Ms. Vermeulen owned it, as it is when I own it. Nobody has the right to walk on it, go walk a dog on it or anything like that. Nobody does that on your properties. and certainly you can't do it to my property or to anybody's property. We sit back at minimum 110 feet from the lake. I flew a drone from across the lake and only saw trees. Even if you build a 25-foot structure on the property, as we're proposing to do, you cannot even see it from across the lake. And the area below the lake, which we don't own, and it's naturally already got lots of trees in it, and as you walk dogs through there, which I've seen you do, which is perfect, because I think it's a beautiful area, that will continue to stay the way it is. We, in fact, have agreed to give to the city over 10% of this property as part of the NFB agreement that we have established. And so I guess I understand that you have all these people that are telling you to hold up this moratorium. I just feel I've been sacrificed personally with $2.5 million of investment, over $100,000 of expense on top of that to do tree survey, to do everything that the NFP asked us to do. And still now I'm being told as of last Friday that, by the way, let's just wait 6 more months. It just seems unfair. And we are not going to do anything outside of the boundary of what NFP has told us to do. We're not going to destroy the city of, I am a state of Michigan resident, unlike what Ms. Thompson said. I do live in Michigan. I live in Stevensville, near the lake, and I value the beauty of the nature as much as anyone here does. And if you look at the way that we do our properties, we landscape the heck out of them. We put more flowers and more beautification than almost any facility, so we don't even look like a car wash. I don't even like to call us a car wash. I happen to be the board chairman of the International Car Wash Association. And in that role, I have seen hundreds of car washes throughout the country, and none look, not generously, none.
Sir, your time has expired. Good evening.
My name's Zachary Laster. I live in the city of Kalamazoo. What happens next to a property has a direct impact on a property. I think we all know that. I think that's part of why we have zoning regulations. I think we all know what it's like to have something going on in our block or in our neighborhood that causes problems on our property. So for someone to say just because they have trees, it's not going to have an impact on Asylum Lake, I beg to differ. Car washes are noisy. They often have odors. And despite someone stating that they have the best car washes ever, and they're very, very fine, that's not enough for me. And I think backroom agreements can't really be enforced. Like he said, it's voluntary. He could just decide at any point to not follow that backroom agreement. And I think waiting 6 months so the city can figure out how to properly codify in zoning regulations how to properly handle this to protect the Asylum Lake environment is important. I think Asylum Lake's, like, I've only been there a couple times, I'll be honest. I don't live in that area and it's hard for me to get out there. But it's really beautiful. It's nice. It's a treasure, and not many cities have that type of resource like we have in Kalamazoo. And I think we need to do what we can to protect that.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to address this item? Seeing no one, Commissioners requested action is a motion to adopt the resolution. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Cooney.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Urban. Commissioners, before we enter discussion, I want to remind the audience we have 2 members missing this evening, and all votes of the commission that pass have to be passed by 4 individuals sitting here. That would be a majority tonight. Just wanted to clarify that for you. Is there discussion? Commissioner Anderson.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So there's a variety of things which are connected that I'm thinking about when we're thinking about this topic here. And so I'll try to keep this theme going, although it may seem a bit disconnected here at times. First of all, just personally, I certainly agree with the ideas that part of placemaking and part of these days when people are choosing to live somewhere it's not just following a job. It's related to the place that they live and how they feel about that. And that it is very, very important when you are establishing that sense of place to have, and I'll use a phrase that someone used tonight, that embedded concept of conservation. I think that is very important. I think that has actually been part of Kalamazoo's history, and that's important. So that stands there. Another thing, and some folks recognize that tonight, is that we also have a situation where private property is for sale, and for sale signs get put on it, and certainly anybody can buy that private property, and then related to what is allowed uses on that property can use it for that. And that is something that I know that we all are respectful of that idea. That is the system that we're working in here. So related to all that, it truly is not a situation that is, I guess, fair is the best word, for a person to purchase a piece of private property that was not for sale in secret with an idea, looking at what the zoning was, what could be allowed there in terms of commercial activity on that corner. So I'm sympathetic to that idea as well. That's certainly something I think we're all supportive of. So how do we, as a group of people living together here in Kalamazoo, accomplish both of those things? Respect, allowing people to have opportunity to purchase property and do what is allowed on that property. How do we do that? And at the same time, how do we also support a community value related to open space and conservation and respect for nature and that sort of thing? Well, the way that we do that, I mean, there's pieces of it, but it's like this. It's like having it clear what our expectations are in a written form so that anybody who happens to be purchasing a piece of property, whether it's for a house in a neighborhood or whether it's on the edge of a commercial zone, knows when they're making that purchase what will be expected of them. I mean, that's how we go about doing that. And I know that we are going through some zoning changes here in Kalamazoo, and we're coming up with some kind of new ideas. And I have to say that, you know, as I've watched us move through some of these things, some of this new thinking, and I am no zoning expert, but we're coming up with new titles for areas, the Live Work 1, Live Work 2, you know, natural features, protections. These is not terminology that has, you know, heretofore been part of our, you know, description of how our zoning is working. And I've wondered, how is a concept that can seem kind of an amorphous, I have to say, because when you get right down to an actual development, there have to be very non-amorphous things in it, you know, setbacks, tree coverage, so on and so forth. How does that, the idea of a natural features protection overlay, get incorporated with that nice idea into very specific things so it is clear whether it's being followed or not? So I am presuming, and I've heard some folks say tonight, well, we're making progress. That can be done. We can identify things so it can give folks who have multi-interests comfort that there are a set of expectations and that that's something we have agreed to and we can live with. So relative to all that tonight, I understand that we have concerns about this particular development and valid concerns. But I'm hoping more so that even though, you know, we'll talk a little bit about the moratorium idea, and I'm generally supportive of that, but there's two things that I feel are even more important than just this property and just what we're talking about tonight. And that is that we move forward with all due speed and create a great natural features protection overlay. And we don't linger around on that. I'm sure that there's people who have a great deal of expertise they can bring to the table on that. Let's do that. Let's get it done and make it clear. This is not just about this particular piece of property. This is about all sorts of settings that many of us are interested in that will be affected here. And because in some ways, some of these locations seem somewhat different from each other, I'll be interested to see what this natural features protection overlay, how it works in different circumstances. I think it's very, very important to do that, and I'm hoping that we're not going to kind of go back and forth and not get anywhere on it, and in 5 months and 28 days from tonight, we're going to say, still figure it out, we don't really know where we're going with this, we think we need another 6 months. I really am encouraging us to not do that, but to really get focused on the big picture of it and get it done. More so than that, and I know this is maybe, I'm not sure how best to describe it. I was going to say naive, but let's have a plan for this for Kalamazoo. We're talking about plans for neighborhoods. We're talking about plans for Eastside. We're talking about that. Let's have a plan so we're not doing defense project by project. You know, let's have a plan for what we imagine for our open space in Kalamazoo, and let's be intentional about that. And it is a fact, yes, it is a fact that our lifeblood for all the things we do in Kalamazoo, how the system works, is property taxes. We need value that is taxed in Kalamazoo, and that's what supports our open spaces and our non-open spaces. And the city of Kalamazoo has been in a position lately where just a few blocks from us, great value has left this town. We used to have thousands of highly skilled research scientists working just a couple blocks from us here in buildings that provided great tax value to the city of Kalamazoo. And those buildings are now basically either, for the most part, no longer there, those jobs are gone, or being used for fantastic, you know, but non-tax paying, nonprofit uses. So it is that value that I think we can all appreciate that we need. We need people who care about investing in this place and paying property taxes as part of what all of us do to keep this place great. So we recognize that development will occur, and hopefully we want it to be good development, but let's have a plan about that, so if we maybe see something that's coming up or a piece of property that's for sale, or someone in this circumstance, for example, who we knew was not going to stay there in that property forever, that was coming to an end, maybe part of this plan is how do we as a public entity, you know, be in line to acquire some of these locations, you know, as part of our long-term vision, and that is incorporated in what we're doing as well, rather than finding ourselves in a situation where, because the market is the market, you know, a piece of property goes for sale, just like up for sale, like the one we're talking about, and a person buys it, that is not an evil person. That's a person who is a business person who purchased a property fair and square and wants to do something with it. So I don't want to demonize that idea, but I would like us to work together in a thoughtful way, looking forward, so the work we do helps us, perhaps in the future, for example, if some development proposal occurs, that this room could be just as full of people here to say, we support that development because they are meeting the requirements that we set forth in our vision for Kalamazoo, which may be reflected in natural feature protection. So that's what I'm hoping for. I just have a couple, questions, and that is this, related to this moratorium, Manager Riskma, does that affect the work at the corner of Parkview and Oakland, that particular project?
Yes.
Right, okay. Are there other projects kind of similarly poised right now? And I mean, if we got 4, 6, how many projects do we have queued up that will be affected by this?
I've been told there are about 3 projects that are impacted by this. And Director Kick is coming up to.
Okay. So anyway, this isn't the only one. There's other
Right.
stuff that will be affected. So that all said, is, you know, I guess one of the things I was thinking is, do we need 6 months to get this done? I mean, we've been talking about this now for some time. I mean, maybe that's something I'd like to hear about just a little bit. You know, why 6 months? You know, what's our new thinking on this?
Thank you, Commissioners. We asked for up to 6 months.
Madam Planner, introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Christina Anderson. I'm the city planner for Kalamazoo. We requested 6 months from this body, and we want to make sure that up to 6 months. Yes, we have a baseline, and we've started the process because we did convene a group of technical experts in the environment and in Kalamazoo's environment to start the discussion. So we're working from a baseline, and right now, fully staffed, I am able to, we've already started to work on what those development standards, what the ordinance would include. I'd like a couple months to draft it and run it through the committee. I also want to make sure we are here tonight because of community outreach on this topic, and we need to make sure that whatever we draft has the opportunity to go back out to the community. So when it comes before this body again, we have it right and correct, and we don't need any additional time. I hope it doesn't take us the full 6 months, but I wanted a little bit of cushion in there to make sure that we do the thorough outreach following our public participation plan.
Thank you. I appreciate that information very much. So I guess all that said, you know, I'm supportive of the moratorium, but what I want everyone here tonight who cares deeply about this to commit personally to this idea where we find ourselves back with more questions 6 months from now. I believe we can do this. I think it's a good opportunity to do it, and let's just make sure that we do a good job and get it done together.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban.
Thank you, Mayor Hopewell. I'll try to present my view on this issue, directed largely to the other commissioners, but to the audience here and on television as well. A little bit of history about this. Ideally, it would have been ideal if the Natural Features Protection Plan had been approved at the same time the Imagine Kalamazoo 2025 Master Plan was approved. I think everybody that would have been ideal. But going from where we had been to where we need to be was just too much to do in that time frame. We had to begin right away getting the things done that were already in the pipeline that needed the master plan to be approved. So what happened, as my understanding, is we moved ahead with the things that were already in the works and took the things that were most near completion that could be done within existing zoning laws and existing ordinances first. And unfortunately, natural features protection has a lot of complicated parts to it. So I'm sorry we didn't do it before, but it's one of those things that we can't go back and in time and start again. So here we are. I think that something to keep in mind is this particular property, the Vermeulen property, has gotten tangled up in the course of developing the Natural Features Protection Plan, but it's because it's the one that's most nearly ready to take action on. But there are others in the works. It's very important that we have a consistent set of rules that applies to all property in Kalamazoo. A lot of the things that have been talked about so far are very specific to the Vermeulen property. Whatever is done on that, absent of uniform city ordinances about it, is going to be just case law that's used to say, well, you let them do it, why can't I do it? It gets too specific, and it just creates confusion down the road for everybody else. We want to have general standards being applied that are well thought out, that have the input of not only scientists, but also of people who care about the quality of life who aren't scientists. And it's very important that the people who care about quality of life and the ambiance and the philosophy of living in areas that seem like almost Walden Pond, that they understand that in order for those things to be manifest, there has to be some scientifically based rules behind them. Otherwise, we're just talking about perceptions, and we all have different ones. So it's worth taking the time to get it right and have it be consistent for all the properties that are coming along. I know of one big one coming along, and there's another one as well. So this is all good work, and I want it done right. The people who have advocated speed, I say deliberate speed. In 6 months, if that's what they need, that's great. But the thing is, when they say 6 months, we're going to hold them to it, at least I am as the city commissioner. When they asked for 6 months, I understood that that was up to 6 months. It's very unwise these days and times to promise something you can't deliver on. And so I figure that the 6 months is a promise that the city staff feels it can deliver on, and I sure hope the city commission will support delivering on that. So that's my second main point. The third thing is the work that's already been done on this, talking with the people that are working on the National Features Protection Committee, that work isn't wasted. That work is providing specific details that helps make real some of the things that are going to be put into more general language that's going to apply to everybody. We have specific examples now to kind of ground our thinking about what goes into the ordinances, what is going to go into these policies that come out of that are going to be part of the Natural Features Protection Plan. So that work is valuable. It's good. I'm glad it's already begun. That's grist for the mill. That's information that we can use. So I don't feel that any of that has been wasted. I think we're going to end up with a better product than we ever would have had in 6 months than we could have by just jumping ahead right now with something that's too specific. So that's it for me. Thank you for listening.
Mr. Cunningham.
I guess I'll start off with a question for our city manager, our city attorney. If we pass this moratorium today, will it cover any applications that have been submitted today, Monday, December 3rd?
Mr. Attorney.
I've provided the opinion to Mr. Lubin, who I met with this afternoon, who said yes, that they would.
Okay, thank you. That's all that I wanted. You know, I guess I consider myself the pro-business commissioner. But I think above all, you got to be firm, fair, and consistent. One of my largest frustrations with the city and the city staff is that over the last year, I feel like we've been having situations where we're reactively zoning versus being proactive. One of the main things that I consistently express to not only the community but our commission is the decisions that we make affect this community for the next 100 years. It affects the individuals who will be here long after I'm gone. And so we need to be intentional on our decisions, period. And I think you know, there's a lot of things that could be said about this space. I know that I've visited quite a few times. I enjoy this space. And I think that when we develop it, and when this space is developed, we want it to be environmentally friendly. At the end of the day, I definitely understand that time is money. And so for the individuals, when we specifically talk about Asylum Lake, you know, I can't sympathize with you enough. I can only imagine if it was me in that space or in that predicament. I would want my return on investment, period. You know, I think the frustrating part that I would imagine is that this is a moving bar. You know, I can only imagine also, you know, engaging with the community, having conversation, trying to be the best steward for this environment, for this space that I personally own, and then feeling as if the bar is continuously moving. I think that if we're talking about a moving bar, you know, I will say the conversation that I've had with city staff is that you aren't being singled out. I think that this has just been a systematic issue that I've noticed this year specifically, where when zoning comes up on our agenda, it's typically a reactionary situation. And it's frustrating. And I don't think it's necessarily intentional. I think that the fact that we have a new, the Imagine Kalamazoo ideology, the fact that we have our new master plan is a situation where we're creating the new vision. We're creating the new benchmark. And that's kind of frustrating when you're creating this new vision and at the same time we're dealing with an economic boom. We're dealing with a lot of investors coming into our community who want to, you know, capitalize on this opportunity. And being pro-business, I respect that. That is something that I appreciate, for someone to come into this community and say, hey, you're worth investing in. And not only are you worth investing in it, I believe that I can get, you know, some type of capitalistic opportunity from investing in you. I believe Kalamazoo is the greatest city in history. I believe Kalamazoo is the greatest city in America. I believe Kalamazoo is the greatest city on this planet. And I continuously say that, and I say it with ease, because no other community in the history of the United States, in the history of any continent, has more friends and family than Kalamazoo for me. That may be a different comment for other people, but at the end of the day, I truly believe, you know, there's a wisdom in taking time. And I'm not only speaking for this specific circumstance, but I hope that this is an ongoing situation, that you don't feel pressured to, as a city government, to always react, always respond. Sometimes it takes time to think and thoroughly process. And since I've stated that, you know, I often get frustrated in the same sentence, and I know we kind of mentioned and touched on it earlier today as the mayor mentioned. We have a budget session coming up, and that's probably one of the most important duties of the city commission. But also, we have to look at what's going on the state level and the national level. And I would just like to, you know, just put this information out for my colleagues and the community at large. There's a Senate bill legislation 1188, Vegetation Preemption Act, which pretty much regulates, I don't have the bill here in front of me, but it regulates the local government in regards to our trees in a, correct me if I'm wrong, in an industrial zoning. So it allows, it pretty much, we can zone for industrial, in regards to environment, but we would lose a lot of our ability on what we can zone and what we can dictate in regards to our trees in our community. And whether you're for it or against it, I would recommend that you go get this act, learn it, or potential legislation, learn it, figure out who to talk to. If you'd like to know, I would advise you, if you're in the city of Kalamazoo, you have your House representative, which is John Holy or Brent Iden, or I should say countywide, and then you also have your current representative, which is Margaret O'Brien. Thank you. She's going to get me for that one. And then, these are important issues here in the community, period. And oftentimes, as a city governance or as a city staff, they aren't able to catch everything that comes across their desk and be as reactive or as responsive as I would assume you guys would like to be. But that comes back to our community, to continuously be in this space. We have a packed house tonight over something that is very vital, very important, and I would ask that you continuously engage with us. I have an open door policy. A lot of my colleagues, I feel that you guys have an open door policy. You can engage us via email. You can engage me via social media. You can call up to City Hall and voice your concern, voice your issue. I want to start creating a culture in this community, within our city governance, within our city commission, that is proactive and not in a situation where we are reacting. Because at the end of the day, I would be completely frustrated at the fact that I feel like it's a moving bar. And as an African American, it's too often in my history that I've learned that that is the case. So the instant that this came across my desk, that piqued my interest. I said, okay, what have we done prior to? But I can honestly say, I will honestly say, we have been dealing with this situation time and time again this year. And I don't, like I said, the stars have kind of aligned to create the scenario, but all in all, I really want to encourage the city staff to please, please, please be cognizant of these situations. I understand that we always can't catch them, but we have to be intentional in those spaces.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cooney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I want to begin by paying my respect to Mr. Tehrani. Thank you very much for wanting to invest in our city and for all that you have done to try to cooperate with the city. I really appreciate that and I respect you for that. This is part of the process because the final decision has to be made by these people sitting up here. So this is part of the process. Whatever you've done before was very important, but we're in the end, we're the guys that got to make this final decision. So I want to start off with that. I am persuaded that there is no question that it is in the best interest of this city that we have a 6-month moratorium and figure out exactly what we want to do here. There's no question in my mind. But I agree with Dr. Hampton that during that 6 months, Mr. Tehrani should be one of the people at the table as we make our decisions. I want to say to the people that came here tonight, thank you. You are so impressive. I am impressed deeply with the expertise, the experience, the passion that people in this city have for the wonders of our city. And I think that, for me, you made 4 important points that I'm going to carry with me. First of all, that economic development is very important in a city, but it is not all that the city should be about. That the quality of life in the city is much more than just its economic development. It's the natural beauty, the natural wonders that we have in our city. Second, among the wonders that we have in our city, Asylum Lake is right up there at the top. And I can appreciate that because my wife and I walk our dog out there at least one day a week, and I thoroughly enjoy my walks through Asylum Lake. The third point that I thought you made that I thought was very important was the decisions about these natural beauty that we have in our community have to be very carefully thought out. And we have to look at best practices. And we have to get people at the table who really know what's going on. So that's why I think we have to be real careful and make sure that we know what we're going to do. That's why this moratorium is important. And a fourth point that you make, I think, very important is that during those 6 months, all the people have to be at the table. That means the neighborhood associations have to be at the table. That means the environmental groups, and especially the Asylum Lake people, have to be at the table. So that when we make the decision, it's the people who decide. So there's no doubt in my mind that this is the best step that the city can take tonight. And I want to put this in the context of what is happening on the national level. I just read in the paper this morning that President Trump and his people are considering opening up the National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska. So the values that you expressed tonight are being trampled on at our national level. What Tom Small spoke about tonight, about the creatures that are out there in the wilderness, those things are just totally disregarded. It is so important that a local community stands up and says, we reject that. We think natural wonders are important. We think all creatures are important, and we're going to take a stand for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm going to be real quick because you have all said it all. I'm going to support the moratorium. It seems to make sense to me. We have to understand that this was not the only next step. There was still the Planning Commission, and I can imagine, having been on the Planning Commission for many years, what it would be like to try to go from a residential rezoning. I mean, so there was not going to be a simple way forward other than trying to figure out a path that everyone could wrap their arms around and come around and support. Again, I do, though, support many of the comments that Commissioner Cunningham has said, because we've had 3 projects, so we knew that we needed to get this done. So whatever caused that not to occur, I think that is why we're here tonight dealing with this. Whatever those reasons are, we got to be having the best situational awareness and being on top of our game. And I would submit to you, no offense intended, I'm not sure we were. Just frankly, I'm not sure we were. So I'm going to support the moratorium. It's logical. It makes sense. We can find a path forward together. Clerk Merlin, please call the roll.
Commissioner Cunningham?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney?
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. G6, please, Mr. Manager.
Approval of an amendment to the Foundation for Excellence bylaws, removing the reference to a grant-making committee in Section 6.02 of the bylaws, and directing staff to coordinate with legal counsel to advance the item to the Michigan Attorney General's Charitable Trust Division or its successors as required by the Articles of Incorporation.
Please exit quietly, please, folks. Thank you. We have other business. Anyone wanting to speak on G6, please step to the podium. You have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Seeing no one, Commissioners, requested action is a motion to approve the amendment. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Commissioner Anderson, supported by Commissioner Urban. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney?
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham?
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. Mr. Manager, do you have a report this evening?
None, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that my office is partnering with the Michigan Bureau of Elections to do a pilot project for a risk-limiting audit of the election results from November 6th. That will be happening here on Wednesday starting at 9 a.m. This is a great chance for us to be part of a process that could lead to these types of audits being implemented statewide, and so it's an exciting thing for us.
Thank you. Questions for the clerk?
I just want to say real quickly, it is unusual to hear someone so excited about being audited. So that is the sign of a good clerk. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Attorney, you have a report this evening?
Just briefly, as everybody knows, the legalization of marijuana will go into operation on Thursday. As a result, there will be some amendments to our ordinances that will be coming your way in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now at item J, policy items. Good evening.
Good evening, Your Honor, Commissioners. Do you have a PowerPoint? I don't know if, are you going to bring that up, Scott? No? Oh, okay. The presentation was in the packet. So it might be.
Let's go forward.
If not, let's go forward like it's 1988. So tonight I'm going to, first I wanted to remind you that we are having our final Connected City meeting at Metro Transit on December the 13th at 5:30 p.m. to discuss the Complete Streets policy updates that will also include the jurisdictional transfer of the Michigan Department of Transportation streets, as well as discussing a pedestrian crosswalk ordinance. Thank you, Clerk Borley. So I wanted to be sure that everyone had that public meeting on their radar. It's on our Facebook, it's on our websites, and we've been distributing flyers liberally throughout the neighborhoods, neighborhood associations, and the downtown. It will be at the Metro Transit Meeting Room located on Ransom Street. So I wanted to first give you the, thank you. I wanted to give you the connection with Imagine Kalamazoo. This is in the Connected City chapter. This is where we talk about the Connected Cities principles and most importantly, the transportation framework. So the Complete Streets network considers access to all destinations by all means of transportation. The number one thing that we continuously heard through Imagine Kalamazoo was connect our neighborhoods. Connect the east side to the north side, connect east side to Edison, connect east side to downtown, connect Vine to West Main Hill. Make sure there are these connections that happen so that people can access walking, biking, transit, and car. And if you've walked from the north side to downtown, if you've tried to walk from West Main Hill to downtown or from Arcadia, we have some serious roads in our ways. We have some big barriers. And so we want to make sure that we're using inviting public places, which was that tenet of looking at our streets. Streets make up nearly 25% of the land that is used in Kalamazoo, and that's land we own, we take care of, we should be stewards of. And if we are using that as a barrier, we need to look at the land use, look at the transportation, look at how we are spending dollars on those roads to make sure that this is access for all people in all modes. And I've said this at many, many meetings, and you've probably heard me. There are a lot of people who drive cars, lots of people. This is not about a choice for people who would like to leave their car at home and ride their bicycle, to leave their car at home and to walk. This is about people who already have to bicycle, who already have to walk, who already have to take their bicycles. Okay? Let's look at the people who don't have choices as well. So in Imagine Kalamazoo, we began to thoughtfully break down the streets into a hierarchy where we wanted to talk about those streets that have to carry a lot of cars because we need those streets. We need the regional transportation. But that gets us all the way down to a gradient of trails as well, and thinking very carefully about what each one of those streets is doing now and what it can do in the future. So that's where we thought we needed our own Complete Streets policy. Now, why did Kalamazoo need our own? CATS has one, the Kalamazoo Area Transportation Study. The Michigan Department of Transportation has their own Complete Streets policy. And so when we use funding from the Kalamazoo Area Transportation Study, or we use funding from the Michigan Department of Transportation, we are looking at their standards. Now, when we use our money to spend that on our local streets, we do not have this policy in place. And that's why this policy is important. We have been practicing it with the people that work in the city of Kalamazoo right now. Director Baker has made sure that we are consistently working together with community planning and economic development and public services. Now, if Director Kick and Director Baker were to win the lottery tomorrow and run away and we find our vacation homes, can we make sure that the next directors will be following the same path? That's why we want this policy in place. We want to be sure that there's a legacy, and we're making sure that these streets are always considered this way. Complete streets are also fiscally responsible. The Complete Streets checklist is a very comprehensive checklist that talks about what kind of land uses are going to be on this street. Is it residential? Is it mixed use? Is it commercial? What should happen on these streets? Should they get road dieted? That's fiscally responsible planning. As far as the Complete Streets policy in terms of how engagement will work as well, we are going to have an advisory committee. We want to be sure that we have a committee that can provide us with up-to-date amendments when needed, be able to do research, help us with engagement. This is a national best practice for cities who have adopted Complete Streets policies, and so we're following that. We also want to be sure that community meetings are held, at least 2 of them, because what happens is streets are planned in 5-year increments. And so when the plan goes in to get the funding from the CATS, from Kalamazoo Area Transportation Study, that's one point of contact. Hey, by the way, we're going to be doing something with Ohlin Drive. But by the time we receive the funding, could be anywhere 3 to 4 years later, we need to come back. Let's check back in. Let's make sure that we have agreed, we're back on the same page about everything that we agreed on. And lastly, the other items that we're going to be covering at that meeting at Metro Transit on December 13th, it's a Thursday, 5:30 to 7 p.m. There will be a presentation first, and then staff will be there for answering questions. We're going to talk about a crosswalk ordinance. Now, this crosswalk ordinance has been a Michigan State practice. This exists in Ann Arbor as well. And so as a pedestrian is approaching a mid-block crosswalk, and a few that I can name, there's one right outside of our front door. As you cross the street from City Hall to Bronson Park, that's a mid-block crosswalk. It does not exist at a signalized intersection. You can think of one, there's at Michigan News Agency as well. You're crossing. So now you're going to notice them all over the city. And this crosswalk ordinance helps to protect pedestrians that cross at those crosswalks. They will be signed. Some of them will be signalized so that, again, to alert motorists to where these are. Now, when I bring this crosswalk ordinance in front of you, what we're going to ask for is a delay in when we put it into effect, because we want to embark on an education and media campaign prior to putting the ordinance into effect. So if I bring this back to you at the beginning of the year, we're probably going to wait until April or May to actually put the ordinance into effect so that we can be sure that we have worked to get education and media out there to inform the public. And then lastly, jurisdictional transfer. Jurisdictional transfer is the city considering taking back the Michigan Department of Transportation streets. And these include Kalamazoo Avenue, Michigan Avenue, Park Avenue, Westnedge Avenue, a portion of Stadium Drive, and Riverview Drive as well, and then also on the east side, a very small spur of Kings Highway. We went through a process called the Planning and Environmental Linkages Study, which started in 2016. Through that study, we wanted to understand how to calm traffic through the downtown. We also wanted to understand how to better connect to the universities and to the neighborhoods. In 2014, the Michigan Department of Transportation had done a charrette, which showed us a really great vision for Michigan Avenue. They took an entire lane out and put a cycle track, but the street remained in one direction. And it also only covered a few blocks, and then it stopped. And we thought, wow, you know, thank you. This was a really wonderful visioning exercise. What's next? Can you do more? If we could do this, what else could we do if we studied a little bit more? And that's how the Planning and Environmental Linkages study began. And now we have the opportunity, because we kind of came to an impasse with the Planning and Environmental Linkages study with MDOT. We got to a point where we wanted to start making some decisions after we had all of the information, all of the traffic study data, all of the historical data, all the crash data, all of the speed data. And it, quite frankly, frightened all of us. So we said, well, what are our options? What can we do to traffic calm? What can we do to make this a safer place for Kalamazoo residents? And they said, well, we did a safety study, and we restriped the roads, and we made sure people know where parking's delineated. And that's pretty much where we end. If you want to do anything different, if you want to do anything more, if you want to change the speeds, if you want to do different things with lanes, you should probably take them back yourselves. And so this is where we're at now, is wanting to understand what kind of choices do we want to have with the streets in our downtown, in our near downtown neighborhoods. And we realize that that comes with extra costs and identifying budgets and understanding and knowing what it is we're taking on. And so we've worked really diligently for the past year with the Michigan Department of Transportation. Even myself and other traffic engineers have gone out and we rated the roads, and we did come up with a budget, and we do understand where we're coming from. And so I'll have a lot more information for you about that transfer. And again, we're meeting December 13th at 5:30 at Metro Transit. You have any questions for me?
Thank you. We're now at citizens' comments on any item this evening. Please step to the podium. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Seeing no one, we are now moving to...
Sorry, I'll be really quick. My name is Zachary Lassiter. I live in the city of Kalamazoo. I fully approve of some sort of crosswalk ordinance. I frequently cross a crosswalk that wasn't spoken about on West Main near K College, and you don't know how many times with me legally crossing that crosswalk, someone comes speeding down West Main at probably double the speed limit and then tells me to get the, Bobby will shut the microphone off if I use the word, get the something out of the road, and I'm in a crosswalk. And it's something that really needs to happen. And when I was in Ann Arbor, when you walk up to a crosswalk, it's like traffic stops, and it was something really hard for me actually to get used to, how much in Ann Arbor they actually respect pedestrian traffic, and here in Kalamazoo it's like a different world right now.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one, we are now at commissioners' comments. Commissioner Anderson, Commissioner Cooney, Commissioner Urban.
Yes, I have something to add. First of all, I'd like to thank all the people who came down this evening. Many of them left probably to put their children to bed or maybe catch a football game, but it was really great to see so many people down to address the issue of the moratorium on rezoning requests. I want to add this in regard to something that Commissioner Cunningham expressed. He talked about the frustration of that we feel over being assaulted with many kind of reactive requests regarding zoning and issues regarding development. A lot of that's coming about because of the new master plan. We are dealing with a moving target. And if we were so on top of things as to be not reactive, in other words, had thought things through so well that we were not needing to be reactive, we would appear autocratic and out of touch to the public, who have already been decided. And when I first got on the city commission, that's how it looked to many, many people in Kalamazoo, is the people up here had already decided how things were going to be and just get used to it. Since our new city manager has arrived and his staff have been hired and promoted and reassigned to very important positions, we have a new kind of ethos that's evolving, which is much more participative, much more interactive, and so it is going to seem like rough and tumble. Well, that's what public processes are like. If they're good public processes, they're going to be rough and tumble. I welcome that. When I see a full room with people getting ready, wanting to speak, I love it. I think actually we're on a good track. I think that, yes, we could do better in anticipating issues. Certainly this Natural Features Protection Plan, as I said, would have been great if we'd had it in place 2 years ago. But we are beginning to do better. And it's going to be a while before we're perfect. But I think the action we took tonight is a big step in the kind of direction I want to see us go.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cunningham.
Just to follow back up, the city staff does an amazing job. I believe they put their blood, sweat, and tears into this community like a lot of us who are up here and actually represent this body do. So I'm very appreciative, and I hope that you didn't take that sentiment any other way, of your leadership and each department head's leadership. Specifically, as I always say to you, Ritzma, is that I think that you're not afraid to explore. Now, I think that at the end of the day, the more knowledge, the more education, the more understanding we have, the better we can make better decisions, period. And the fact that we're willing to look into Foundation for Excellence, the fact that we're willing to look into rezoning, IK, Imagine Kalamazoo, these are some things that, you know, are unique to our community. It opens up the conversation for dialogue, and I definitely appreciate, and as I stated, I want every individual who watches us on a daily to continue to engage. That's my dream, is that every single time we come in here, yeah, we don't leave until 10, 11, 12. I know there are some people up here who might not agree with me on that, but at the end of the day, I appreciate that engagement, and I think that it speaks highly about the commission when we do have that type of engagement. And I appreciate the fact that even when we, you know, put our hearts into something, it may come back frustrating when we don't get the results that we want. But at the end of the day, you know, like I said, if we weren't having this type of engagement, there would be a problem in itself too. But I still encourage the city staff to try and be, you know, intentional on what's around the corner. You know, being intentional on how to, you know, have hindsight 20/20 vision. You know, I'm probably asking for something that no man can do, but at the end of the day, did you just?
Did I just what?
I hope you.
Excuse me.
Turn your mic off. No, but in all sincerity, I appreciate the city staff. I appreciate the work that you guys have done, the work that you will continue to do.
We are adjourned.